In this video, you're going to learn how to create an Ableton file or an Ableton set out of one song from Multitracks or Loop Community and set that up using my method so that you can then take multiple songs and put them into a set that you can use for completely automated worship or a completely automated set on Sunday or wherever you're going to use it. Go ahead and hit the like button if you like this and subscribe and follow along. We got lots more videos to come.
All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So we're looking right now at just a normal Ableton set, and this is a blank Ableton set in session view. We're not going to use session view very much because it just isn't conducive to the method that I'm teaching. So some people use it. Loop community guys use it a lot, and it's great. They have a way that works for them. A lot of DJs like to use it. I don't prefer it, but anyway, so we're gonna move over. That's like these three little lines, by the way, it's like vertical, right? So things happen from top to bottom in session view, and then if you hit these horizontals, things actually happen from left to right. And I'm gonna actually go ahead though and just preload a set that comes straight from Multitracks, because 9 times out of 10 that's what you're gonna be working with, and I want to make sure that this is succinct and useful from the start. So what I did was I grabbed Canvas and Clay, and it's in the original key of B, and it's 72 beats a minute. And then you can just go ahead and launch the multitrack.als. So this first video, the purpose of this is to show you how to set up a song based on the method that I use. And the way we do that is every single song gets its own Ableton file, and then we make a set out of multiple Ableton files. So let's go ahead and have a look. As we get started here, you can see I'm going to actually pinch. You can zoom in a number of ways, but I'm going to actually just put my fingers on the graphics pad and just pinch out because I want to be able to see things a little bit more clearly. You can also move through the timeline by clicking here and dragging, or you can just skim it with your fingers. So you can see that Multitracks goes ahead and gives you sections. And there's the count off, there's the intro, as follows, as you're used to. But one thing you got to know is that when you create an Ableton set out of multiple Ableton files, it's not going to preserve these. So and we're going to need these for the system anyway. We're going to need to make our own locators. That's what these are called. And if you hover, you can see I can delete it, I can rename it, we can use automation to move between locators, we can set song start times. There's a whole lot of things you can do. But when we first get a song, I'm just going to show you what I do to get it prepared. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set my master outputs to 1 and 2. And this is something that should already be set up. In another video, I can show you how to set that up over in preferences. But so long as you have these set up for 1 and 2, we're basically just going to send down the left side output, we're going to send the stuff that goes to people's ears and not into the mains. And then the right side output is going to go everywhere. So those are just some things to keep in mind. So the first thing I usually do is I'm going to right click on the top track. Actually, I'm going to do a little housekeeping real quickly. I like to just call this click, and I'm going to be referring to these as cues, not guide. And I'm going to make sure that the color is white, because the way I set it up, everything that's white is ears only, and then all the rainbow colored stuff is going to go everywhere. So that's how that works. You can see over here, top to bottom, 1 through 23, there are 23 stems in this stem pack, and if those are yellow, they are on. If they are not, they are off. So this is how we mute and unmute stems. So on Sunday morning, if we come in and we have a drummer, well, let's go ahead and ditch out the drums and maybe the live drums too. They may not be playing loops, so we'll leave that in. We have a bass player, we have an acoustic, and let's say that we have our electric player, he's just going to play the second electric stem, so we'll mute that one. And if we have a piano player, we can unmute that, and then they've got like 7,000 keys, and then the strings and choir. Usually with these choirs, a lot of times I'll leave these in, because they just kind of sound. Let's just have a listen. See, that's just a little gang vocal. You could leave that in the track. If you don't want to leave it in the track, you can take it out. I don't think it's too distracting. So anyway, now we're going to go back, and I'm going to turn these all back on because I digress a bit. So the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to create groups. So I'm clicking this, and then I'm holding down the shift key, and I'm going to click this one. Now I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say group tracks. And I'm clicking that now, and then I'm going to use the Command R function. You can look that up each time, or you can right click and hit rename, but Command R inside Ableton is rename. So I'm going to call this, because we're going to use this in multiple in sets, I'm going to call this canvas and clay ears. Okay, so now I can collapse that, and now all those 2 tracks that I had just for your ears are now collapsed. Another thing I'm going to do is I am going to set the output as channel 1. And there's sometimes, like when I play out, I actually like to split the cues out onto a different, here, let's make that white. I like to split the cues out onto a different channel. So the reason for that is that sometimes your clicks are, you know, and you can hear plenty of click, right? So we all know these scenarios. You can hear plenty of click in your ears, but you can't hear enough of the cue track. So you turn up the click/cue track, and then you end up with way too much click in order to get enough cues. So if you split out one more time, if that's an option, and the reason that's an option is because I'm actually using an X32 here. So what I've done is, you can see my vocal here for this video, and then I've got click and track and cues all coming in separately. And because I have an interface instead of simply just plugging a headphone jack into the computer and sending left and right only, then I have a little bit more freedom and I can do that. So that's what I'm going to do here. But as for you, if you're just running like a TRS 1/8 inch cable out of your computer, go ahead and just set the whole group for canvas and clay ears to 1. And then we're going to do the same here. I'm clicking that, and now I'm going to hold shift, and so I can select all those stems, right click here, and then group those. Command R for rename again, and I'm going to call this canvas and clay stems. So these are the ones that everyone's going to hear, and I'm going to set that external out to number 2, because that's the part that we're going to actually let come into the mains. For purposes of the video, see how nice and slim that is now? Now that we have everything all grouped, imagine once we have 3 and 4 songs in here, how nice that's going to look, and we're going to see that probably in the next video. So now, remember I said these things are not going to go into the set, so these are going to disappear if you try to drag this song into a set made out of multiple Ableton files. And so I'm going to show you my little trick how to preserve that. I'm going to insert a MIDI track, because some MIDI tracks are going to be Command R rename, and I'm going to call this markers. And inside of my personal MIDI, or really it's my resource file. I'm going to make this white too, because it's it pops out much more easily against this dark background that I use for Ableton. If you're using the white background, you might want to use black for your markers, but you can make that decision yourself. It couldn't matter less what the inputs and outputs are for the markers, because we're not actually sending any information. This is just for us, okay? So I'm going to show you how to do this now. If you look down in the description, you'll see links to some of the resources that I'm providing you here. So I have right now just this Ableton videos, and what I've put is my resource file. So this first one, Bill's MIDI Cues project, this is the one we're going to use right now to set this song up. So we're going to expand that out, and then we're going to expand this ALS out. This is an Ableton set all of its own, and this is something I'm going to give to you. You can use this anytime you want to. You can edit it. I can show you some other things in other videos about how to do that also. But for right now, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to mimic these markers, because that's important. So since we know that these specific locators are not going to make it over into the Ableton set we're going to create later, we're just going to give ourselves a little cheat sheet. And you can do that for a couple of different things. So let me show you how that basically works. See how I have, these are the basic cues that get used. So for count off, I'm using one called count in. That's just what I always call it. You can call it what you want to. And then we go to the intro. See, I'm just dragging these over and finding the corresponding cues. So intro, once again, I'm going to drag it here. And then for verse, I'm going to drag this here. you're going to see that these are going to be really, 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 really helpful to you later. So this is a smart thing to do. That first time that you don't have these and you jump over into making a full set and these locators don't come with you, you're going to be lost, and then you're going to be like, I got to go back in and add these things.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and just put this in fast forward so we don't waste a lot of time, and we'll just get the rest of these cues in, and we should be good to go.
And remember that your cues are going to come one bar before these markers. So that's another way to help you. Like if you did need to find them, you can see the cues right here. Like there's a little wave file, so it's going to tell me. Now another thing you're going to notice, wow, we're going to jump into some advanced stuff here, because another thing that you're going to notice in a song like this is that there are actually some time signature changes in this song. These, by the way, are another thing that sadly are not going to come over when you move into a set that's full of different Ableton sets. So since the tempo changes, like right here, it's actually, if you turn on the Ableton click, you can hear that this thing goes from 4/4 to 2/4 back to 2/4. So you're gonna hear it 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, and then 1,
chorus.
2, 3, 4. See, that way the song just fits together well. There's no need to be stuck because we have so much technology now. There's no reason to be forcing those 2 extra beats to stay in. Just skip them and make it a 2/4 bar. But like I said, that stuff doesn't come over. So what you're going to do, and I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to click here where this 2/4 bar is, and then I'm going to go Shift-Command-M. That is the shortcut for creating a new MIDI cue. Again, these aren't doing anything. They're not sending any information. These are just for you. So now I'm going to go Command-R, and I'm just going to type 2/4. And then I'm going to make another one right here, Shift-Command-M, Command-R to rename, and I'm going to make that 4/4. That way when I actually get to the set later, I'll know that this is the bar where I need to right click and I need to change the time signature. You can see how I can edit and change the time signature there. So we'll see that when we're putting the full set together. But those are a couple of examples of that. Let's see if we can find some more. I think it happens, before each chorus. So again, we're going to go Shift-Command-M, Command-R, 2/4. Repetition will help you, I know. Shift-Command-M, Command-R, 4/4. That way I know where these things are occurring because I'm not getting a cue for that. So the only way to get it is to know where they occur. And then right here, we got another Shift-Command-M. And we don't have any room because we made an ending cue right here to tell it to go back to 4/4. It doesn't really matter because it's the ending. But if you really wanted to, you could just insert another MIDI track. And you could have a second, you could have like markers B or something like that. It doesn't matter. And then you could actually drop in that additional Shift-Command-M to make a new MIDI cue, Command-R to change to the name, and then go 4/4. And that way you can have 2 at the same time. Or, you could even split it by measure and add it in 4/4/N. I like to do it this way because I like to see stuff when it's actually supposed to happen. So that's how that works. So at this point, and I'm going to actually delete that because I don't usually do that. And once that's all collapsed, you should actually be able to follow along with the song. So now let's go back to the beginning, by the way. It's an important thing to do. It's a very good place to start. If we start here at the actual count,
1,
right? You can see
2,
as you're in the count-in right now.
intro, 2,
We're about to
3,
hit the intro right
4,
here, right? So now as you're looking at this from the stage,
intro,
maybe it's down at your feet if you're leading or if you're on drums, you can see when we hit these different sections, and it's very,
Verse
very
1.
helpful in performance, right? We hit the verse. So let's skip ahead and see where that 2/4/4/4 business happens. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we 1, 2,
chorus,
2, 3. All right, and now we're in. So those are the basics. These are the things that we have to do to set up these songs. Now I'm going to show you, I'm turning off the loop bar because I don't want it to loop. There's no need for that right now. I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to show you a couple of other things that I do to set these songs up. we do need to put a tempo track in. And the reason for that is that the Ableton, see how we have 72 BPMs? That's because this thing is pre-programmed. But once we put this song into a set that has multiple tempos, we need to be able to manipulate the Ableton time clock automatically. You don't want to have to sit down and kneel down and change the tempo. So why do that? You know, let's let Ableton do the hard work for us. So in my MIDI cues, I also have these tempo change cues. And these are a little bit trickier. I'm going to show you how they work, and we might even see some of the little quirks that happen with them. I also leave these white because I leave them inside the ears tracks. It's not something that you hear, but it's just a good place to nestle it where it doesn't get in the way and it doesn't take up an extra spot. So I'm going to call this track Tempo. I'm making it white. Probably have to change the color because I think I have colors set up for these cues right here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is drag in this block and just let it go, right? Now, I'm not going to touch anything else because that's when you start to get glitches. I'm going to come down here to the segment BPM section and click it one time, and then I'm going to type 72 because that's the BPMs of this song. I'm going to hit enter, and now once I've done that, I can actually drag this thing out. It's a looping MIDI cue, and this particular looping, it's an audio cue. Let me correct myself. It's not a MIDI cue. Please remember that. There's silent audio in here that actually is set to warp to whichever BPM that you make it. So we're actually going to drag this thing to you could shrink this more by pinching, but what we're going to do is we're going to drag this thing essentially all the way to the end of the song. Typically, you'll see what I do in a set is that I'll let that go right here at the ending because that's usually when we're ready to start a new tempo. But for purposes of putting songs together, you might as well just put them all the same so everything lines up nice and pretty. We have tempo here. I'm going to make it white because that's just how I keep those non-heard tracks. And then I am actually going to drop this thing right into here. And I can bring it to the top. That's fine. Now we have tempo here, which is a silent track that loops. That's what these little tiny hash marks show you that that cue is looping over and over when we pull it out like that. And then we have the click here, which you can obviously see. Click, 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 click. And then we have the cue track. So now we have all these unheard things, at least as far as the audience is concerned, and you hear the clicks and you hear the cues. We're going to collapse that back down, and now we have a nice, tight song. It's basically in a single strip. So what we've done so far, just a quick review. We put the stems in. We set our ins and our outputs, 1 and 2. 1 is coming down the left side. That's not going to be heard by the crowd. 2 is going to be heard. And then we put markers in because we know we're going to lose our locators. We grouped our ear tracks, and we grouped our house tracks or stems, however you want to call that. And now that we have that all done, also we put our tempo track in because, and there's one more thing we need to do to that. And you'll see this when you get it into a set if it doesn't work. You want to click. Right now this is set up as a follower. Warp is automatically set. This is set up as a follower. We want to click it and turn it into a leader. Because what that means is that whenever Ableton's playhead gets over this tempo track, it's going to change the Ableton tempo, the beep click up here, to whatever tempo this little track says it should be. So keep in your mind now, this tempo track is not warping anything down here. These things are already 72 beats a minute. All we're doing, and you can warp these things, they're done very differently than that. But what we're doing is we are warping this, the Ableton tempo clock, and we're making it so that whenever that tempo clock gets heard, it changes the Ableton clock to whatever BPMs this tempo track is set to. And we can see that it's set to 72 BPMs. So that's critical. So now we have, these are the main things, guys. These are the main things. If you have your markers, if you have your ear tracks, your tempo track, and then all your stems, you can now use this for just music and playing, okay? The last thing I'm going to add on to that, and sometimes I hit this too because it just gives me more space to work with. The last thing I'm going to add on to that is I'm going to add in a slide cue track. The first time that I do this, I typically put these are MIDI tracks. I want them to be at the top because I want these markers to really touch the rest of the stuff. It's the best way to see where you are in the song. In this case, I'm going to call this slides, and sometimes these will change around once you drag your first cue in and you have to change it again. And I'm going to set the output as IAC bus 1. That is what I use for ProPresenter. So we're assuming that what we want to do in this case is not only do we want Ableton to run our tracks, but we also want it to go ahead and manually change our slides for us. You can choose whatever color you like. I typically use this green for slides, and then there's another one that I use for lights, but we're not going to look at lights right now. That's another video for sure. As for this one, really all we need to do is preserve some space for slides. So you can either drag those cues in from the start. If you have ProPresenter set up, you can go ahead and import the song, and then you can use these cues that are still inside that same Bill's MIDI cues file. And what we do is we do a couple different things. At the very beginning of the song, we want to pull up the playlist. And this is like whichever song item you have in ProPresenter. Now this depends on how your ProPresenter is set up. If all you put in your ProPresenter is songs, then item 1 is song 1, item 2 is song 2, and so on and so forth. But if you start off like your first item is pre-service and you have slides playing and music playing and stuff like that, then that's going to be item 1. So you really need to count down your playlist items in ProPresenter to make sure you have the right playlist or song so that you can fire the right slides. But let's assume for right now that the first thing in our ProPresenter on the left side menu is going to be your first song, which is this. So we don't do this now because this is going to change every week. If you might do and see how that changed to playlist over there. I'm just going to change that back to slides, and now it will stay that way. If we use item 1 now and we leave it like that, then 2 weeks from now, when your third song is Canvas and Clay, you're going to have to change that to item 3 anyway. So I don't usually do that at this stage. I'll leave that out. But what you can do, especially if you set up your first slide of the song is probably a blank slide, that's going to be slide 1. And my slide cues are set up differently than some others. I made these myself because I found so many slide cues out there that were so limiting, and you could only have 20 or 30 slides per song, and that's no good. So what I did is I created my own template where I can have up to 127 slides per song, and the way that's accomplished is that we only use one note. We just use one note, but we use 127 different intensities of it, and that's what tells ProPresenter when to change the slide and what to change it to. Now that's really good because now you can actually have your slides go from start to finish with blanks in the middle, and you can have everything repeating. And if you do this, if you just line them up from 1 to 127 or however many you use, you're going to be in good shape because your next slide up on the on deck slide on the confidence monitor, it's always going to be correct. As long as you have it correct in ProPresenter, it's going to show up on your monitor. And I might show you in a subsequent video my sweet little confidence monitor that I put together that is, it looks like a wedge. It looks like an old wedge monitor, and then you stick an old flat screen TV in it, HDMI, boom, you're done. You're seeing that stuff right at your feet. It's very cool. Good budget way to do things. You can skip a projector and everybody's got an old TV laying around. So so that's basically it. Now, if slide 1 is a blank, we'll probably pull that in right around the intro. And that means that we wouldn't have our first slide that has words in it coming up until right around verse 1. So, and that is In My Mother's Womb, right? So we know where that comes. Let's have a listen.
1.
In my mother's womb. Right? So that's on the beat of 4 that word in comes in. If we want to, we can actually do it right in time. Let's, let me shrink this down a bit so we just get 4 beats. And you can see that's just another lesson for you. If at this point we have beat 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you go to the next. If you pinch it out some, you can get 8th notes, you can get 16th, you can go crazy. So however much you want to customize it, you can customize it. Now, if we want that slide to change literally at the point that the lead singer is singing In My Mother's Womb, then that's where you want to put it. Now, I would say probably put it on beat 3. So that way you have snap. In my mother's womb, right? So now you get an extra beat. And however many slides there are, see, this depends on how many lines you put per slide. I suggest no more than 2 lines per slide. I think it gets really difficult to follow when you have a paragraph on a slide. And when you're doing these automated and you only have to set it up once and it works forever, why not make it really slick, and why not have those things fall right on the beat? So if that first slide was "In my mother's womb you form me with your hands," right? And then it goes to the next one, I'll show you where that would drag.
Verse 1.
Snap. In my mother's womb, you form me with your hands, right? So my rule of thumb is right on that word "hands" that appeared right here. That's a good time to fire the next slide, because everyone's heard they've seen and heard all the words, and now they're going to get another beat before they see the next slide come up. And this is exactly how you do it. So as long as you have your audio MIDI setup done properly, your IAC is done, and I can do that. That's not good for this video. It takes a few minutes to do, and you can also find a million videos that show you how to set up an IAC driver. Then what will happen is, as long as your ProPresenter is mapped the same way that my cues are mapped, which is an important thing, so I will give you a little glimpse at that if ProPresenter will ever open. Then these notes, they all have their own intensity. This note, what we use for slides is an F-sharp -1. That's the note that we use. And each F-sharp -1 has a different intensity. So you can see that by this red dot that's sort of down here. And as you get higher, then that red dot rises all the way up from, let me use my mouse and not my fingers, you can't see, from 1 to 127. So that's the significance of, hey, Bill, why do you have 127 possibilities? That's because we're using one note, 127 different intensities. ProPresenter is not liking me today, so I think I'll include a screenshot instead to show you what that mapping should look like. That's not that difficult. And now once you know these intensities and you can see them, because we can see that that's intensity, that should be intensity 3 right there, which is slide 3. See, slide 2 is intensity 2. So as long as your ProPresenter says that that you cue a slide with an F-sharp -1, then whatever those intensities are, that will fall into place for you. Shrink that down. We can see that everything is in order. Let's assume we put all of our slides in and everything is set. You are now ready to use this, and you just need to save it. So what I would do is I would save the live set, save it as, because we want to make a separate copy of it. And wherever you're going to keep your tracks, I would honestly recommend, like an external drive is a really, really good place for it. So here's the Samsung. So I might make a new folder and I might call it songs. And once I have that song folder, I'm going to call this canvas and clay. And you can call it, you can name it how you want. This is a key of B and it's 72 BPM. You can warp these things to different keys if you want, but since Multitracks gives you the choice between every key, you can just make an Ableton set for every one. Just make a copy of it, ditch the stems out, and put the ones in for key of A, for key of B flat, however you want to do that. But there's also an easy way to warp that so that you can change the key without having to do that. Most people sing a song in 1 or 2 keys, depending on how many worship leaders they have or how many lead singers. So now that we've got that done, we're just going to save it. It's going to sometimes it'll give you a little indicator that says, "Hey, this was made in an older version of Ableton. Do you want to update the file?" Of course you do. Go ahead and update that file. So now we have all the things set for this. We are ready to take this song plus 2 other songs, maybe, or however many you put in a set, and then some pads and some cool MIDI cues, and we're ready in the next video to put all of that stuff together and make a set out of it that has no dead space, where everything flows well from one thing to the next, and that happens pretty naturally for you.
So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it helped you. Feel free to leave questions in the comment section, and also don't forget, hit the like button and subscribe, and then hit that bell so you can know when those next videos come out. Next thing we're going to do is take one of these and put several of them into a full set with pads for a completely seamless set with no dead air and full automation. So see you soon.